Suspiria is the 2018 remake of the cult classic 1977 giallo directed by Dario Argento. This new version is directed by another Italian director, Luca Guadagnino. As was the case with Halloween that I mentioned a couple weeks ago, how do you exist 40 years after such an iconic film? With Halloween, the decision was taken to recycle all the imagery. Suspiria, however, decides to elaborate on very much a similar plot, but in terms of imagery, that's where it chooses to distinguish itself, and to veer as far away from Argento's vision as possible. In Argento's version, the color palette is extremely bold, and the colors are very saturated, full of greens and reds and purples and blues. Guadagnino's Suspiria is hyper-desaturated, with flat colors, lots of grays and browns. Argento's movie takes place in a colorful and fantastical castle in the Black Forest in the south of Germany, an area that is extremely evocative of something like a fairy tale. Guadagnino's movie moves the plot to Berlin, in a dilapidated and broken down gray city that's all concrete and ruins, a city and a main location that is still very much scarred by World War II, and evokes an aesthetic that I could only describe as communist Gothic. So the film takes place in 1977, in the city of Berlin, as mentioned, a city still marked by the war, and that is cindered in two, that is very much the epicenter of the Cold War. Because of the aesthetic, of the setting, of the time period, and because you have this coven of witches operating within secret, it does evoke a very John le Carré espionage feel. All of this contributes to Suspiria 2018 being a very different beast to Suspiria 77, to the point where it's no longer really a giallo. Now, that's not a bad thing. I actually applaud the film for wanting to be something different. The question is, now what is it? Some people will answer that it is a bold, suspenseful, and artsy horror movie. Unfortunately, for me it was a very boring, empty, vapid film that tries very hard to be arty, but has a very abstract idea of what it means to be arty, and failing miserably. Luca Guadagnino has done nothing in his career to convince me that he's a good director. His remake of La Piscine is laughably bad, and Call Me By Your Name, a critical darling, was nothing for me more than a self-congratulatory bourgeois fantasy. Guadagnino is the kind of person that's so full of himself that he probably believed just remaking a genre film about a bunch of witches in Germany was way beneath him, and so he felt the need to shoehorn the Holocaust into his film. Unfortunately, Argento is 10 times the director Guadagnino is and will ever be. Every frame of Suspiria 77 transpires passion, emotion, and love of cinema, whereas this version is cold, passionless, and empty. It is a poser film. It poses as an artistic endeavor. It manages to fool critics and spectators into thinking it's profound by setting it during the Cold War, by adding a backstory to its main character about religious extremism and sexual repression, by evoking the Nazi death camps. Despite his 35mm lens and his fancy camera movements, despite Tom York's fantastic music, there's nothing to hide the bloated, void, interminable nothingness that is this version of Suspiria. It is politically profound in the way cable news is politically profound. It is subversive in the way a Geico commercial is subversive. It has the sincerity, the beauty, and the emotional resonance of a Samsung commercial. It is a cynical, mechanical, dead object with zero humanity, and is cliched and formulaic in the same way that big studio action and comedy movies are cliched and formulaic, only within the indie artsy parameters, and will very much please a plentiful crowd of Brooklyn hipsters and first-year film students. Putting the Holocaust in your horror film does not make it political, nor does it make it smart. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching the video. As always, be sure to hit the like button if you like the review. Subscribe if you're new. For returning subscribers, thanks so much for watching these as always, and I guess I'll see you guys around. Bye!